Today we're back out here at the OSU Student Farm, and joining me is Parker Lasavica, who is the assistant manager here. And it looks like we've got some cool season crops, and I gotta say, anybody that's growing cool season crops in this last couple of months with the fluctuating temperatures, it's kind of been tricky, hasn't it?
It's been very tricky. We've had some crazy extremes this spring.
And cool season crops like that, you know, average temperature like we all like, right?
That's right. Yep. 70s highs, lows in the 40s. That's what they prefer.
And so what has been the problem out here with these fluctuating temperatures?
Well, the highs have been, low 90s some days, and I think we got almost to 100 there about a month ago. And that's what they want,
Right.
because that sends them into flower, but we don't want them to go into flower. It makes them
Right.
turn bitter, not really edible anymore.
Okay, so and when they start initiating that flowering, they start bolting, essentially elongating that growth. When we're after the leaves and the vegetation, so we want to keep them in that vegetative state as long as possible, right?
That's right. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing here to mitigate that heat and protect them and keep them from bolting.
Sure. Yeah. So you can see we've got a shade cloth. It's kind of like sunblock for plants, but what it is this woven fabric, kind of a plasticky material. And it just reduces the amount of sunlight and thus heat that can get to the plants.
Okay, so like any of us in the hot, we want a little bit of shade
That's
on us,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what are you finding? So tell me how, I mean, this is not research or anything that you're doing. It's just been more kind of accidental, anecdotal that you've experienced out here. Talk about what you've harvested and what you kind of had under shade and the variability there.
Originally, this was all lettuce and it was all covered, and we harvested a little bit of it a couple of weeks ago. We harvested a section, and a few extra plants got uncovered, and we're left without shade for 4 days. And all it took was 4 days of highs in the 80s, and they started going bitter.
Really?
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of were just thinking you would try this. What percentage of shade did you get to do this with?
So for the lettuces, we picked a 50% shade. They come in all ranges, 20, 35, 50, even up to 75, and you get into 90, that's basically patio shade at that point.
Right.
But
so that might be a little too much.
a little
for 'em?
too much.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially for your more heat sensitive crops like lettuce and maybe some herbs, 50% is a good one to go for.
Okay, and then you can kind of adjust as you see how things work from there.
Right.
It looks like it just was kind of buried as if you were using freeze cloth or plastic. Has that made harvesting a little tricky, or how do you recommend that?
A little bit. So we were trying to beat the highs in the forecast, and we were moving fast, and all we had at the time was just burying. We just put the wire hoops in, covered it, buried it on either side. What I would recommend is maybe burying one side and then using something like rocks or whatever you got, something to weigh down the other side, because it has been difficult to harvest. We've had to kind of pull up, unbury it, and then it throws some dirt on the plants. And if you could just move the rocks, lift up a side, get in, harvest, put it back down, that would be much easier.
Okay. Well, of course you're doing this for the shade, but have you found any other benefits to having it covered?
There actually have been a few other benefits. So since we have the row entirely covered, it works as wind protection. For one thing, the plants are much more tender under the shade, but also bugs can't see it as well, so we've had reduced insect pressure. And then even rain splatter. So especially lettuce is notoriously bad for getting rain splatter on the leaves.
Which kind of will get some dirt on it too sometimes with that. Yeah.
Yep. And so this greatly reduces that dirt that gets on the leaves.
So it sounds like an overall much cleaner product that you're harvesting here as well.
That's right. Yep.
That's amazing. And I know, we're talking about this as a practice with cool season crops, but tomatoes are kind of in that certain range too. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that even though they're full sun plant, that in our extreme sun, sometimes they need a little bit of shade as well.
They do. We don't really have a way to cover those out here, but if you do have a way to cover, again, with maybe a 35 or 50% shade, that'll help with sunscald, tomatoes and peppers, and probably even eggplant as far as that goes.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So later on when the temperatures start warming up for them for sure, and it kind of giving them a little break later on in the season as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks for this idea, Parker.
You bet.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.